Hello, supply chain world. My name is Bill Dubois. I'm with Kinaxis, and I have the pleasure today to be speaking with Laura Cesari about elevating your supply chain planning experience in an SAP environment. And Laura, I think you're the perfect person to do that. And we're here, we're going to be talking about elevating that supply chain planning experience as it relates to the economic, the functional, and the IT communities. We're going to be talking about the functional, the planners today. You've mentioned in a couple of your writings that it's really about the value the planner brings is managing in today's complexity and volatility. And so my first question would be, can that happen on a traditional SAP stack today? What's it going to take for those planners to survive today?
So it's tough. If you look at the user satisfaction of SAP deployments, whether they're APO or IBP, and we do an annual survey around satisfaction, the satisfaction's low, and the dependency on Excel spreadsheets is high. And one of the issues is the lack of what-if capabilities.
Right.
So, when a planner is trying to put forward a plan, they've got to answer a lot of questions, and a lot of the questions have to do with what if we do X or what if Y happens in the market, and it's really hard in the SAP environment to do any of that kind of analysis. And because the executive teams tend to be much more around wanting to see the results versus people telling them, they need the ability to show that kind of analysis, and it's just not available in the SAP environment. And that's actually something I think Kinaxis does really well, and one of your core differentiators.
Yeah, great. So actually, why I'm thinking of it, that the research sounds like it would be valuable not only for SAP customers but for anybody. Can you talk a little bit about what some of the questions you were asking around the planner, and what life was like for them today and what it's going to be like tomorrow?
So there are really 5 key questions in that survey. Is, can planners get to data? How hard is it, right? Do they feel supported by their executive team, which is often a gap? Do they have to depend on Excel spreadsheets, which is a real big gap because 68% of planning is done on Excel spreadsheets. And as you and I know, planning of a complex nonlinear system cannot be done very well on an Excel spreadsheet, right? 4 is, can that solution model the environment? Can they get a feasible plan? Which is often a big gap because they have to do a lot of workarounds, right? And 5, do they feel supported by the technology provider? So one of the things we're doing, and we've got baseline from 2 prior surveys, is looking at the relative satisfaction of industry, by type of solution, and how it's happening over time. With more millennials coming into the workforce, they want applications that look more like their cell phone, right? And, the baby boomers like myself were more comfortable with the traditional environments, which were hard to use. But we're seeing declining satisfaction with supply chain planning tools because they're just too hard to use.
And you talked about, the ease of use and getting good at planning is not easy. That, we do have millennials coming in. Hopefully they won't be seduced by that allure of Excel, that it's so easy to, get. But there's, you talked about data. That's probably the biggest problem, is getting all that data into Excel. And when we talked about the economic buyer, you talked about that cultural paradigm shift. So what's it take to wean yourself off of Excel?
Well, the first thing I think we've got to recognize is it's a problem. It's a problem because you really cannot model constraints and bottlenecks very well in Excel. And most of our organizations have very complex supply chains where Excel is just not equal to the modeling. And because we're not holding ourselves accountable for the definition of a feasible plan, forecast value add, schedule adherence, they're really critical measurements of planning. We can't see that. So measure, test for feasible plans. The second thing that is really difficult about Excel is it encourages maverick reactive behavior. It encourages planning in isolation.
Right.
And one of the great things about Kinaxis is you actually encourage planning to be collaborative.
Yeah.
Your concurrent capabilities allow planners around the globe
Right.
to see what others are doing.
Yeah.
But in Excel, people are actually working in what I call Excel ghettos.
Yeah.
Leaders need to recognize that, elevate that, so that people
Yeah.
can work together and we can move forward on collective wisdom. The third is we've got to move from a reactive culture to really valuing the
Right.
important, right? When we are having important and urgent in the same workplace, the urgent always wins. So planners need time to plan, and they need to have leaders that recognize the need to reward planning.
Right. So, and I think that you'll get planning falling back to Excel because of gaps in the current environment. So, it's a challenge, and I think it's a great point about having leaders that recognize those gaps and addressing them. What final piece of advice then would you give not only the planners but the leaders in terms of closing those gaps, short and long term?
So I say, well, go get software that can, right? Because there are a lot of capabilities of software that can be layered on top of APO or IBP that allow you to alleviate those gaps. As a leader, I'm hoping that people understand that there's value of planning, there's value of using decision support to do trade-offs between customer service, cost, and inventory. Bill, inventory levels have gone up post-recession, and 9 out of 10 calls I'm getting right now is around customer reliability and the fact that we're just not able to do well against giving customers consistency in orders. So I think we've got to pull up planning to say it's really valuable if we can really unleash the power of decision support.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Laura. You did describe Supply Chain Insights as a small company, but I have to tell you there's big information there. So I'd highly recommend everybody check out your blog, look for your books,
Thank you.
and great insights. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Bill.